Horror story, water ghost. I am from Nanping, Fujian province. This incident happened when I was in the 4th grade of elementary school. Our family had just moved from the urban area to the other side of the river. Due to the new environment and my personal experience with this incident, the memory remains vivid even after many years. That morning was no different from any other day. I went to school with my friends, laughing and playing along the way. We leisurely arrived at the riverside after crossing the bridge, hoping to see something interesting on the river that day. And sure enough, I happened to spot a fisherman who was pulling in his fishing net with great effort. It seemed like he had caught something big. I immediately became curious. The fisherman pulled the net back and forth several times but couldn't bring it up. Excitedly, he shouted to the fishmongers on the opposite bank, "Hey guys! The catch is too big! I can't bring it up! I'll get closer to the shore. Can you help me out?" Upon hearing his call, my friends and I also became excited. We put our backpacks on our backs and ran towards the river, ready to feast our eyes. Vroom! Vroom! The fisherman powered up his boat, and black smoke billowed from the rear. He dragged the fishing net and arrived at the shore. Busy with his work, he joyfully said, "This must be a big haul. You guys better give me a good price later." After jumping off the boat, he handed the head rope of the fishing net to the people who came to help. Several people shouted slogans and finally managed to pull the net, along with the fish, onto the shore. Since they were used to fishing on the water all year round, the others didn't find it as fascinating as we did, so there wasn't much competition to see. As the dark green rope gradually emerged from the water, the fishing net stirred up the muddy water, mixing it with the clear water of the shallow beach. Inside the net, there was a slender and completely green creature struggling, but there didn't seem to be any big fish. After completely pulling it onto the shore, I could see that the creature was entirely black, covered in green algae from the water. It had a face resembling a monkey and ears like a cat, with front paws resembling a praying mantis and hind feet resembling duck webbing. However, as soon as it was out of the water, it immediately went limp, barely breathing, unlike the earlier struggle that required several adults to pull it. It truly bewildered me, and not just me, but the fisherman and his companions were also puzzled. At that moment, a fishmonger who was sitting a little farther away calmly explained, "Don't pull it anymore. It's a water monkey." As soon as they heard the words water monkey, other people nearby quickly gathered to see. It seemed like they hadn't seen it before either. The chatter and discussion made the riverside more lively. The fisherman, who thought he would make a fortune that morning, was now somewhat worried. This water monkey didn't seem like a good thing. There were also rumors about water monkeys causing harm and leading to drowning. However, since they hadn't encountered such a situation before, they didn't know how to handle it. The crowd started giving him suggestions, and in the end, he decided to take this mysterious creature to the Yuantong Temple at the foot of Jufeng Mountain, not far from here, and seek the help of the monks. Although I was curious about what would happen next, I realized that I was already running late for school due to all the commotion. So, my friends and I hurriedly ran to school. Throughout the morning, I couldn't help but think about the water monkey and what would happen to it. As soon as school was over at noon, I ran towards the temple with my friends, who were equally curious about the incident. As soon as we reached the temple gate, a pungent smell of fish mixed with the stench of dead rats greeted us. As we walked in, we saw the incense burner in the center of the temple knocked over, and the ashes buried the water monkey, forming a small mound. The old monk next to it explained to the onlookers that this water monkey was the manifestation of resentment and needed to be resolved by incense ashes to dispel the resentment. Then it needed to be burned with fire to completely eliminate it, or else it would cause trouble again in less than 3 months. As I listened nearby, it seemed like it would be best to dry it out before burning it, and it all sounded quite mystical. Although the ashes covered it, the foul smell was unbearable. My friends and I went back home separately. Later, I heard that when the water monkey was burned, thick black smoke filled the air, making the entire temple smell foul. Moreover, after the water monkey was dealt with, there were no more drowning incidents at the confluence of the 2 rivers and a creek in our area for several years. Horror story. Hanging. This is a true story that happened to my mother's close friend, Aunt Wang. Aunt Wang is in her 40s and works as a bus driver. After divorcing her husband a while ago, she moved back to her parents' home. The house is located in an old residential area, mostly occupied by elderly people whose children have moved out. One day, Aunt Wang returned home late around 10 p.m. after finishing her evening shift. In the corner of the first-floor hallway, she saw an old man standing with his back against the wall in a strange posture. However, Aunt Wang didn't think much of it and just wanted to get home quickly, feeling exhausted. After she arrived home and had a quick meal, Aunt Wang was about to lie down and rest when she suddenly started sweating profusely. She felt a suffocating sensation accompanied by palpitations. Thinking it might be due to her recent low mood and exhaustion from work, she didn't pay much attention to it. The next day around noon, Aunt Wang, who usually wakes up early, hadn't gotten out of bed. Her mother opened the door to her room and found her daughter's face looking pale. Despite calling out to her multiple times, Aunt Wang didn't respond. Worried, her mother immediately called for an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctors couldn't find any immediate health issues with Aunt Wang, but recommended further examination to determine the cause of her shock. After a few hours, Aunt Wang regained consciousness, feeling like the doctors hadn't discovered anything wrong. Moreover, she was concerned about the high hospital expenses, so she hurriedly discharged herself. On their way back home, Aunt Wang and her mother noticed a memorial hall set up in the neighborhood. They inquired with the neighbors and learned that Mr. Li, who lived upstairs from Aunt Wang, had passed away. Upon returning home, Aunt Wang still felt very unwell and went to bed early. In a dazed state, she felt someone sitting on the chair next to her bed, constantly watching her. The figure seemed somewhat familiar, but she couldn't remember who it was. The next morning, as soon as Aunt Wang got out of bed, she felt something unusual about her body. However, she mustered her energy and prepared to go to work for the early shift. While tidying up the blanket, she noticed a lot of hair on it. She hurriedly went to the bathroom and was shocked to find a large bald patch on her head. Aunt Wang was instantly unsettled and even suspected that she might be suffering from depression due to excessive stress. Nevertheless, life had to go on, so Aunt Wang quickly composed herself, tied up her hair, and went out to work. It was still early in the morning, and the sky was gloomy. She didn't encounter many people in the neighborhood, but as soon as she left the neighborhood, the number of pedestrians on the road increased. They all walked with their heads down, probably due to the cold weather. Aunt Wang found it strange to see so many people walking like that and took a closer look. What she saw was not human at all. They were clearly walking corpses, either covered in blood or with broken body parts, and some even had their eyeballs dangling from their faces. Aunt Wang was startled, and as a man with a pale face and an elongated tongue approached her, she stepped back in fear, screamed, and fainted. When she woke up, she had been brought back home by the security guard and neighbors. Aunt Wang suspected that she had encountered something supernatural and shared her experience with her mother. That afternoon, her mother went back to their hometown, claiming to seek the help of a spiritual master. Not long after, her mother returned, accompanied by a thin and elderly man. He appeared to be in his 60s or 70s, but his eyes were remarkably bright, resembling those of a newborn baby. It was said that this master was born with the ability to see things that ordinary people couldn't. He told Aunt Wang that there was a vengeful ghost with a strong grudge following her. As it turned out, the old man Aunt Wang had seen in the hallway was Mr. Li, who lived upstairs. Mr. Li was an elderly man living alone, and all 4 of his children worked in the city, busy with their own lives and unable to spend much time with him. On the day of the incident, it was Mr. Li's birthday, and he had prepared a table full of dishes that his children loved, hoping to have a lively celebration together. However, when he called his children, they all made excuses and couldn't come. Hanging up the phone, Mr. Li looked at the table filled with food he had prepared, thinking about how he had raised his children through hardships, expecting that they would take care of him when he grew old. But he never imagined that they would turn out to be ungrateful. The more Mr. Li thought about it, the angrier and sadder he became. He felt that only his death would make his children stop and reflect on their actions. With this thought in mind, Mr. Li lost his sanity, grabbed a rope, and ran to the hallway to hang himself. However, at the moment he kicked away the small stool, the feeling of helplessness in the face of death made him regain a bit of clarity. Thinking about his adorable grandchildren and the many unfulfilled wishes he had, he began to regret his decision. He desperately hoped that someone could save him. It was at this moment that he saw Aunt Wang, who was returning home late. Unaware of the unusual circumstances, Aunt Wang quickly walked away without even pausing. At that time, Mr. Li was not yet dead. He was only being strangled by the rope, unable to make a sound. After his death, Mr. Li stubbornly blamed Aunt Wang for not saving him, believing that her indifference led to his demise. Following the instructions of the fortune teller, Aunt Wang and her mother went to a crossroad at midnight, burned some paper money, and apologized. Slowly, Aunt Wang's health began to improve, and she never saw any strange people again. A few days ago, I happened to encounter Aunt Wang and witnessed the bald patch on her head. I believe that there are many unexplained phenomena in this world that science cannot comprehend. Regardless of who was right or wrong in this particular case, it is always good to approach life with a sense of awe and respect for the unknown.